On this episode, we talk with our friend Derick Lehman.
You're listening to the Dudes and Dads Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men be better dudes and dads and building community through meaningful conversation and storytelling. And now, here are your hosts, Joel DeMont and Andy Lehman.
Andy, how are you?
Joel, I'm doing really well.
Yeah, You're looking good. You are.
I need a
The beard's got some work.
Yeah, needs work.
It has some work, which we'll
address later.
We'll address later. Friends, thanks for joining us on yet another episode of the Dudes and Dads Podcast. We are, as always, excited about our guest. We feel like we've got another strong show coming at you. And Andy, I think it's just a testament to the fact that we've had a lot of people that continue to be willing to submit themselves to this show.
That is true.
To put themselves through show experience.
I was talking to Derick before this show,
yes.
And kind of just, he's like, what do you guys do? I'm like, we just tell stories.
Yeah, we just tell stories. It's nothing.
Bring people on.
But every once in a while, well, most of the time in that storytelling, some really cool things happen. So we're just grateful for each and every one of you tuning in, listening up. And I should also say, Andy, to throw back, our recent conversation with our friend James Kennison and our previous two episodes ago,
yeah.
He mentioned us in a show, and I felt
he did, and I was listening to it, and I was like,
super famous. And then I had a friend of mine say, "Hey, James did a shout out to you on his show," before I actually even heard it. So it's like,
now you feel like a real celebrity.
Golly, I just feel special. Always great. We just love it when we get a chance to share on other podcasts or have other people do that. So we feel like, I think just in a very positive way, that the community is expanding in a really positive way, and it's really connected us to a lot of great folks, and I'm just like so happy about that.
Absolutely. And you know what, Joel, I want to thank you because I got a chance to be at your church on Sunday,
you did.
and on your church's podcast talking about grief. And so it's one of the topics we've talked about in this show before, but I will go ahead and link in our show notes that episode.
That's perfect.
So if you want to listen to that, you can.
Yeah, At Home, the podcast with Walkie MC. Yeah, we're only a few episodes in on that one. But Andy, I should say, as I am the primary producer of that show, everything that I'm doing right is all thanks to you, and everything I'm doing wrong is entirely on my shoulders and completely. So
I did notice when we were recording the podcast, you don't have quite the spaceship setup that I do here.
I don't. I'm trying to keep it simple as possible because I just know from my experience watching you do your magic over there that once you add more things, it just becomes a real... It's basically, folks, like Andy is composing a symphony as we are recording, and I'm more okay with like pushing a button and then pushing a button again and being done. So that's the level I'm at so far. But all that to say, we do want to begin the show, Andy, by giving a big shout out to a recent Patreon member.
Member, yes.
Pat Yoder. She has stepped on in support of the show, and we're so grateful for her. So, Pat, thank you for your support. Just continue to help us get the show out to people and to buy guests the thank you mugs.
Yes.
That's really or whatever it is. Now Derick's like, do I get a mug? Maybe,
Absolutely.
probably.
But if you want to join Pat, you can join her over at dudesanddadspodcast.com/support. And for Patreon subscribers, they get special other things.
Yeah, and I think what we should start doing is we should send each Patreon supporter a special prayer cloth that we have anointed with.
No.
No? Okay. It works for some people. Maybe not us. Maybe that's not who we are.
This episode, though, Joel, besides our patrons, is supported by the Concrete Barber. And you can go to concretebarber.com. He's got all of your hair care products that you can order there and pick up in store. Get your haircut looking nice.
Looking solid. But here's the question, Andy. What do we do if we don't have any hair? Let's just put it out there. Let's just say, because here's the deal:
grow your beard and
grow
then,
that beard because he'll take care
and
of
then
your
let
beard.
DJ take care of your beard.
Or if you're like, hey, I want a straight razor head shave,
Oh yeah,
he does that too. So there's really no excuse. There's no excuse for you not to head over to
get
the
yourself
Concrete
over
Barber.
to concretebarber.com.
Do it. Get it scheduled because he's a popular guy. Okay, so there's that.
There is that. So now it's time to bring our guest on tonight.
Oh,
Derek and
gosh.
I share the same last name.
You
We're
do.
both Lehmans. So
Fifth or sixth cousins, more than likely.
something like that.
Something like that.
oops, forgot to actually bring him on the show. There we go.
Fifth or sixth. So Derek, welcome to the show, by the way.
Howdy, thank you.
Oh yeah, and guys, yeah, I know what you're thinking. Sultry voice, and it's true. It's got a real face for radio, just like me.
I've been told that many times.
Yeah. So, Derek, thanks for coming on. Just a little bit of backstory. Derek attends Wakarusa Missionary Church, where I pastor, and that's where we met each other, and we have a lot of similar interests. Baseball being one of them. However, Derek's just informed me that due to the current makeup of the postseason, he no longer watches baseball, which I think is just really pouty and immature. But
It probably is a character flaw on my part that once my team is out of it, I start growing my beard and start preparing for the next season.
wow, it's kind of like a mourning. It's kind of like a season of mourning.
It really
for
is
you.
a season of
I
mourning,
get you.
yes.
I get it. I understand.
Derek, we like to introduce our guests with having them tell us the dad stats. So tell me a little bit about you, your family, your wife, any kids that you have, any stats that make you a dad.
Okay, I've been married to my wife Kim for 20 years now, this past July, and we have 2 daughters. Kennedy is 19 years old and still lives at home, which is just fine. We love her. And Carrie is 15. She's a sophomore at Northwood High School.
And still at home as well.
Still at home
And you,
as well.
and you love her too.
Yes.
No, Carrie can.
No, you
just-
don't.
Yeah,
You
we
don't
do
love her?
We do love Carrie. She's a good kid. And we got many pets, and we live in Wakarusa.
I think you should also share with us because some people would be interested. You do have a couple of internet famous pets, or they're attempting to be internet
famous.
social
pets?
media famous.
Yes,
pets.
we have a couple corgis. We got Watson, and he's a corgi healer, and he has anxiety, so we got him an emotional support dog. So now we have his brother, who is Winston, who is a corgi, and they are now on Instagram as 8 Stubby Legs is their Instagram handle.
Nice.
Check it out. We'll provide a link in the show notes because it's cute. I'm just going to be honest with you. If you want to smile, head over to 8 Stubby Legs on the Instagram for
Yeah,
sure.
It's hard to be upset.
Yeah, it is. It really is. So, Derek, we obviously, as a dude, as a dad, we all have our life stories, but I feel like, Andy, in this particular case, Derek's life story is one that he has told me to really explain it requires a whiteboard. And
We did not bring
we
one
did
into
not
the
bring a
studio today, so
whiteboard,
we're sorry.
So we're hoping that everyone can follow along with your story. And if they need, maybe we'll provide a diagram in the show notes. Maybe we'll have you draw a diagram and submit that in the
Sometimes
show
I
notes.
even struggle with the diagram, and my
Yes.
wife's like, no, you're not related to that person this way. And I'm
Gotcha.
like, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
You're right.
So we'll let you just dive into your story and kind of explain what it is about kind of the family that you come from, what the family that you ended up in, how it was composed, all of that I think is really, really interesting, but it helps us ask a lot of other important questions about what it means to be a dude, a dad, to lead a family, to be, well, let's just say I consider you a productive member of society as well. So
I tell a lot of folks that I'm really, really well adjusted for what I could be.
yes.
So
yes.
I was adopted at birth by my parents, and as I speak, I'll talk about my parents, and then I'll talk about my biological family to kind of differentiate because
Sure.
it gets a little confusing. So yeah, I was adopted at birth, and then my folks were divorced before I have any really conscious memories of them together. So my dad lived in Napanee, and my mom and I moved to Chicago until I was 4, and then she remarried, he remarried, and so ended up having 2 older stepsisters, and then my mom had 2 more sons, so those would be like my half brothers, right? And it wasn't until I was probably 17. Well, when I was 6, I think I had a conversation with my stepmom where she kind of explained like that I was adopted. And it was a story that my mom said that, I should have been able to tell you that. And I looking back, I can realize that she probably never would have told me. It's just something that she wouldn't have brought up because she's I'm getting off track. I apologize. She's a little secretive.
Okay. Yeah.
So, around the time I was 17, I was in high school, talking to my mom. She says something about, you have two brothers. And I was like, yeah, they're in the other room. They're 6'5", few years younger than me. And she was like, no, you have two half brothers. You have one that's a few years older than you, one that's a few years younger than you. And knowing that you're adopted is one thing, but like if your biological mother was too young or if she was too old, like how do you adopt out the middle kid? So that really messed with me for a number of years, like trying to figure out like how does that make sense? And it wasn't until I was married, I think Kennedy was probably already born, where I started looking for some of this. Like I knew a few things. I knew my mom's name. I knew one brother's name. Turns out I was actually searching for the wrong name for a long time. And then finally, an aunt of mine said, "That's not your brother's name. He rode my school bus. Like I was his bus driver, and his name is this." And so I end up finding a biological brother on MySpace of all places. This is how long ago this story.
I say back when MySpace was a thing.
That dates the story. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. So that takes it way back. My wife came downstairs and I'm just staring at the computer screen and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, this guy's name is James Miller, and he's got a butt chin. Look at that." And so we contacted him and got to meet him, and sure enough, he's a biological brother. He was like the first relative other than Kennedy that I had ever known that was biologically, blood related to me. So yeah, turns out that my biological mother had already passed away. I had just missed meeting her by like months, and I never really had that desire. Anyway, my mother continued to adopt kids, and so she probably, even while I was in high school and after, has kids that are roughly my kids' age. So she's adopted probably 2 girls, 3 boys. So I have a dozen siblings.
Okay.
The oldest of which I only found a year or two ago, and he's like 73 years old.
Wow.
He's from my biological father's side of the family, which we hadn't even looked into until recently. And so that's the short story of.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of questions there.
So many questions. So I think number one, as you think, our families kind of define us, right? Like they give us, there's an identity that comes along with the family in which we grow up in. When you think about your family and the makeup of your family and how it impacted you and how it formed you, what connections do you make? What realizations do you have that maybe are even different from how some other families function or other people that you're close to, where you look at their family like, oh, okay, I can see how how their family formed them, and then maybe there are some differences or for you.
There are things that you don't realize are different about your family until you hang out with other folks. I didn't know that you could leave Thanksgiving dinner without somebody being mad until I was, in my 20s, and I was okay. So my mom got married to a Mexican gentleman, and that's where my 2 brothers come from. And so I have a large family on that side.
Yeah.
That I still, even though they're divorced, he was around for, until I was 13 years old, and so we still kind of see them. He actually called me today, invited me to a birthday party. And I have, those 2 brothers that I still really care for and spend time with when I can. But as a kid, at my mom's house, I was the oldest. I had these 2 younger brothers. At my dad's house, I was technically the youngest because I had these 2 older stepsisters, but they were old enough that they weren't home, so I was kind of an only child. So in that like family dynamic of, you're the oldest, you're the youngest, you're the middle child, I've been all 3, which is which is a really weird place to be. I tell like I said before, I tell folks that I'm really well adjusted. Like I could be a lot more messed up.
Yeah.
I could have a lot different issues, other than just baseball and buying too many shoes.
Which, by the way, we absolutely have to get a picture of Derick's shoe collection and have that on the show, because it's. I think it speaks to
Speaks volumes.
It speaks to what's going on, a part of what is going on in there,
Yeah.
for sure. But yeah,
If there's anything going on in there, yeah, I definitely have my own issues, but it's but yeah, as far as you don't know what's different about your family until you get older, and then you look back and you're like, oh, that was unusual, and I'm not exactly sure how to answer the question.
yeah. I guess I think about, like Andy and I, when growing up in the families that we grew up in, when we got married and entered into a new family unit, there is that experience of like, well, I know how my family did things and how my father modeled things to me. And I know, okay, and then there's this other family that I've married into, and there were examples in there.
Right, but in here you end up having several different families plus your wife's family. So yeah, how did you and Kim just navigate that? Because I'm sure you were learning a lot of things.
Our first years together were probably a little difficult.
Mhm.
Especially we worked together, and so the first years working together were terrible. I actually voted against her coming to the store because I was like, that sounds like a terrible idea. But we've really talked through a lot of things. I know that some of the things that were modeled for me were not right.
Mhm.
I'm a person that hates, as much as I love baseball, I'm a person that hates statistics and being a number. And so I will do my best to not do what other people have done. So drinking, drugs, smoking, those are things that I'm like, nope.
Yep.
I saw a lot of that as a kid,
Right.
and I have never had any desire to smoke a cigarette because it's just, I don't want that. My mom's been divorced 4 or 5 times. I really have lost count. And so I told Kim when we met, I said, here's the thing. If we get married, you're stuck with me forever because I am not going to be that person that gets a divorce. So as far as my kids, I tell them constantly, like, hey, I love your mom,
Mm.
and you're stuck with one Christmas, and we're going to be together forever. And, they get tired of hearing it, but I want them to know that, like, Dad's not going anywhere.
Mhm.
Right.
Things aren't going to change. We're all going to live in one house until y'all move out. And you don't have to move out. You just have to have a job.
Yeah.
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 So you had mentioned or Joel had mentioned that you guys go to church together. So being a person of faith, how do you think that your faith or your childhood has shaped your faith growing up?
I don't feel like I had a lot of. I want to start that sentence over. I went to a lot of church as a kid. Catholic church, apostolic church. My mom really made the rounds of trying to figure out what religion or style was right for her. And so my dad went to a small Mennonite church, and I was like, you know what? These folks that sing their hymns and follow the bulletin, you can check things off. That seems really reasonable to me, as opposed to people who are much more boisterous in their worship or whatever. So coming to Walkie Missionary has been just a really nice transition for us.
Yeah.
We've enjoyed it there. We served there for years as far as the youth group and things like that. Helped plant a church in Mishawaka, and then have just recently come back. Actually, I guess it's been 2 years now, but are back to Walkie. But I feel like I have the ability to kind of interact or talk to maybe kids when I do youth work, like who are maybe having problems at home, or things are weird at home. Well, it doesn't get much weirder than it was at home for me.
Yeah.
And so to be able to share that story, to be able to talk to kids and say, well, I understand mom and dad aren't together anymore, but like, you were saying before, like don't say I know how you feel.
Right.
But I've been in a similar circumstance, and let's talk about that. So I feel like it's benefited me.
Yeah.
As weird as it sounds, I think I go into most things with just a very positive attitude, and so to look back on my youth, there's a lot of things that probably should have been more like traumatizing.
Yeah.
That I look back on and think like, oh, that's just a thing, you know.
Yeah.
I'm a little like without making you sound like I see you as a science experiment. I find you fascinating in that way. Of it just seems to me that there were multiple opportunities for things to go a bad direction for it. I mean, like if you kind of paint the stereotypical picture of someone who is likely to be either a violent, a substance abuse, unemployed out on the street, that sort of thing. Like you check a lot of those boxes in certain ways.
Thank you.
Yeah, and yet again, I'll just go back and say productive member of society, a good dad, a good dude. What how
I have no clue. I think it's just stubbornness, really. I mean, I knew what I didn't want to be. I knew what things that I had seen modeled or whatever, and didn't want to be. I've always felt blessed, as much as my folks were divorced before I can remember, and as crazy as my family is. Once I was older and met some of my biological family, like I definitely won the lottery on where I ended up.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the stories that I've heard about my biological mother, and learning just about her and that family, I could go into it, but like there's just a lot of things that have happened in that family that like, man, I'm glad I wasn't a part of that. And that was actually going back to the adoption story. Do you guys want to hear a crazy story?
Yeah,
You guys
sure.
like
Yeah.
crazy stories, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this is where the whiteboard gets really complicated. My mom's mom, my grandma, was adopting a kid from this family, and the lady she was adopting this boy from, who says, "Hey, is your daughter still wanting to adopt?" And she said, "Yeah." And she says, "Well, my brother's wife is pregnant, and it's not his, and so he doesn't want it. And would your daughter like to adopt this kid?" And that's me, you know.
Mm.
So turns out I find out 20 years later that my dad is the upstairs neighbor, who is considerably older. Once again,
Yes.
I should be way worse. And so when we were looking into to who he was, that was all we knew. And then when we finally found some people who knew who he was, they were like, "Oh, he passed away. He was run over by his own semi."
Oh.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, you didn't see that coming. Neither did I. And then and my biological mother had passed away before I met her. But just I think getting out of that family, we looked actually to adopt also ourselves later, and I thought like how this happened for me in the late 70s, like, oh, God's just gonna provide. We're just gonna a kid's just gonna fall into our lap. And when it didn't, I was like, huh, like it's probably it's literally a miracle that I'm here, because if any one of those things had gone slightly different, if they had kept me, or if I was adopted anywhere else,
Sure.
like what or who would I be now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that kind of speaks to, I mean, because part of your question growing up was, okay, and again, without the whiteboard, correct me if I'm wrong, they kept an older and a younger sibling, but you as the middle child were the one that was adopted out.
Yes. So my mother was married, and her husband, my biological mother and her husband had a child, and he would be my older brother through her. And then she had an affair, and that's me. And then their marriage didn't work out somehow. I'm not sure what happened. Probably me.
Probably you.
Yeah, I was probably part of that.
Yeah.
And then when she was remarried, then is where the younger brother comes in.
Got
So I
you.
have these two biological half brothers, but both on my mom's side, and
Gotcha.
then two adoptive half brothers still on my mom's side. And then I found, like I said, years later, this I was talking with a guy on Facebook who I thought was my brother. Turns out he's my 54-year-old nephew, and his dad, who is my
And to be clear, Derick is not 54.
no, I'm 42. I should have put that in my dad's stats.
Yes. So,
And listeners, if you need to pause and write your whiteboard down, go ahead.
yes, yeah.
I apologize. It is even for myself trying to keep track of like who's related to who and how things happen. And it's one of those things where like my mom has never been forthcoming with this information. That's why I say like
Sure.
I don't feel like she would have told me when I was 6.
I think that seems to be kind of a running theme. We've talked to several different people, a couple different people who have been adopted, and it seems like that theme kind of runs with that, where the parents are kind of not, they're kind of not exactly forthcoming. So it seems like that's a theme. When you say Joel,
Yeah, I mean, and do you feel like there was, I mean, as best you can tell, was there shame there? Was there guilt? Was there?
I don't know if it's just she just is not forthcoming with information. And so like there would be things that I would find out, but I would find out from like aunts. My aunt would mention something like the whole school bus thing. I'm like, wait, you've known James's last name this whole time? Well, yeah. You should have asked your mom. I'm like, I did. Like
Right.
and she's all, oh, I don't know. It's she just didn't want to to share any of that with me, and I don't know if that's just a control thing or what brings that on.
So, obviously, as you're growing up, I mean, at some point, there's some positive influences for you. Maybe some people or an individual or a few that spoke some good things into your life, or that came alongside you. And like, would you be able to identify those people?
I was thinking about that earlier about like growing up and who those positive influences would be. I not to speak highly of myself, but like in high school, I felt like I was a really moral person. I wasn't a Christian.
Yeah.
I would probably call myself a Christian, but I was just like, well, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just a very morally good person, still going to hell.
Yeah.
But I didn't see that because I was an
right.
idiot, and I think even moving further ahead, I was telling Andy earlier that I worked for Steve Bell, and like even in that time, I was married, but just working and talking with Steve, I feel like that like I grew a lot, even though I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
And figured a lot of things out. I actually asked him to marry me again when we were together 7 years. Married 7 years, and I was like, hey, if you could do this all over again, would you do it? And she was like, yeah. I'm like, okay, let's go do it. And she was like, why? I'm like, because the guy that you married 7 years ago was an idiot, and he didn't deserve to even ask you. So like I am still an idiot, but I'm not as bad as that guy. So if you'll do it, let's go.
Yeah. Do you feel like Kim knew what she was getting into when you guys first got married?
She was warned.
Okay.
And that's actually a running joke. A friend of mine will say, I warned you, and she'll say, not adequately enough.
Yeah.
So your family now looks a lot different from your family growing up. Your kids are your biological kids, and your family just looks a lot different. Has your definition of family grown over the years, and if so, how and why?
Family is very important to me, but I've also realized for me, like, family is the people that live in my home.
Sure.
is obviously number one, and I have obviously many siblings, and I have the two Martinez siblings that I spend the most time with. Because we spent time as kids in the same house,
Sure.
in the same bedrooms. And so we definitely hang out the most with them, even though they're in Indy and in Coloma. They're not close, but we make time. So those are the two that we definitely spend the most time with. But yeah, it's definitely I want my kids to know that, like, dad's here. Dad's not going anywhere. Yeah, Dad's a little crazy every now and then, but he comes by it naturally, or you know,
Maybe your definition hasn't really changed, because it sounds to me like you're saying now your definition of family is basically whoever's in your house with you. And growing up, that's really what it was, right? It was whoever was there, whoever was with you.
yeah, that's true because I was between two homes. I didn't move to my dad's until I was 13. I don't know why, for some reason, I thought when I was 13 that was a magical age where I could make my own decisions. And I just
Now looking back, you're like, I didn't know anything at 13.
Sounds like a middle school move, though.
Yeah.
Let's be
yeah,
honest.
you're like, I'm a teenager. I'm moving. So yeah, I lived with my mom until I was 13, and with obviously my mom, my stepdad, and my two younger brothers, and then that was in Elkhart, and my dad lived in Wakarusa. So it wasn't like very far away.
Right.
But I was like, I'm gonna move to my dad's, and that was it. And then it's definitely a lot, I guess, a lot lonelier because I didn't have those two younger siblings to play with. But I also like just was I guess a less stressful life. My dad, you asked about people that had spoken into my life. And I was thinking about that earlier. My dad is just a very even keel guy. Doesn't get riled up about stuff, doesn't get down about stuff. We have a really good relationship. We basically communicate in like movie quotes and SNL lines from the 90s. But that's how we've been, since the 90s. And so yeah, I think just watching him as a dad, when I would wreck my car or do something stupid, to see him not like fly off the handle and just totally lose it. Like, well, just talk me through the story. What happened? Let's figure this out. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Definitely was a good role model. Whereas most of the other instances or things like that I've seen have not been as positive.
So as you are parenting two young ladies right now, and who are in, again, it's like challenging. Every season of parenting has its own unique challenges. You have a 19-year-old and 15-year-old.
She's currently 15. Yeah.
So, what are your biggest challenges right now as a dad? If you think about just your both your daily routines, but then also kind of 30,000-foot view, what comes to your mind?
They will hate this, but like my biggest challenge right now is the cat box. I feel like that's like, I feel like as kids, your dad probably harped about the lights and the thermostat, and ours are all on timers, so I don't have that to like even think about. So for me, it's like the number one thing that I every day did anybody check the chickens? Did anybody collect the eggs? Did anybody scoop the cat box? And like we literally have to text when they scoop the cat box so we know who did it last and whose turn it is today. And if you didn't text, it doesn't count. So we're at least using technology. As far as a much wider view, I just want my kids to be productive members of society. I don't need them to, go out and rule the world, but as long as they're, living right, contributing to society, I'd love for them to maybe have deeper relationships with others and with Christ. It's something that I think for them both so far it's like they'll go to church with us, but I don't know that they have that deep connection. And I try not to push it because I didn't have that deep connection in high school either. It was definitely, I was probably into my, 19, 20, 21 years old before it was like, I had that aha moment, but I had that baseline from going all those years. And so
I think that's the crucial thing right there. I know so many parents, and again, I get it. We care about our kids who are looking at their preteen, teenager who's trying to figure out their way in the world in so many ways, and who's maybe like on the faith side of things is just like, there's not the depth that they wish there would be, or the connection. And I've said, and this is me as a recovering youth pastor saying, I think we cannot judge the effectiveness of our ministry to our kids as teenagers until they are mid to late 20s, and we're seeing really
That fruit
the
of
fruit
what's
of
coming
all that
around,
investment. And because I'm sure, as we all are very tempted to go to like very tense, anxiety-filled places if we allowed ourselves to. Just looking at our kids right now and being like, "Gosh, I hope they can get a good job. I hope they can da da da. I hope da da da." And that's just the practical side. Let alone like where are they spiritually? Where are they? Where are they connected? And the deal is that a lot of it is our kids have to go and live some real life and have to feel the weight of personal responsibility and all those sort of things before they can kind of like own some things.
For years, I've said you can't make other people's mistakes for them,
Mm-hmm.
and you can warn them. Get careful, that's hot. You can warn them all you want, but until they touch it, and it's going to cause them trouble, or it's going to get them in trouble. But they're going to learn a lot from that. My daughter actually is really enjoying this new guy at church. He's been leading the Sunday school. I not real sure that he knows what he's talking about half the time. But
it's a fair assessment. But yes, yeah, sure.
She says that this Joel, he tells good stories. He presents things in a way that I really appreciate. And I
God
said,
bless her.
yeah, you can get her that money later.
I will. Yeah, that's ching ching. Yeah, yeah. And I think, but again, it's what I mean. Partly what I appreciate about you, Derick, is that I like hanging out with people. I like spending time with people who are not freaking out all the time, right? Like I feel like there's enough anxiety in our world, and as it is with enough opportunities to be anxious about things. The one thing I appreciate about you, I don't experience you as an anxious person, and I think you have plenty of opportunity to be anxious about things, as we all do, and we haven't even talked about so Derick has I was going to say unique job. It's sort of unique. It has its unique characteristics. Your job does. Tell us like what you do, because I
basically run a clothing store. My in-laws own a store in Elkhart called Big and Tall Outlet, and my wife and I have taken that over for them so they can retire. So my wife does the books. I spend the money. She pays the bills.
Love it.
And I do a lot of Facebook advertising and just working with getting clothes out to the floor and things like that, dealing with the public. So I've gone from a job where I worked in a trailer factory where I was in my own little corner and I could listen to podcasts and just get my job done, to where now I'm dealing with the public every day, which is definitely a trade-off, because people are interesting.
Yes, they are. But it feels as though that so much of your life experience, I think, also prepares you well to interact with, because the variety of folks that walk. Because here's the deal, I have been because Joel is a big and tall person. In case we're not aware of that, listeners, I fit. I'm on the smaller spectrum of the big and tall, but that is still my jam.
Still tall.
Still tall, and the fact that they have double XL tall, just it comes in handy from time to time. So, but that being said, anytime you're running something, you're responsible for running and leading an organization, whatever the case is, which is part of your reality. Now, that's just another opportunity for, again, anxiousness and the responsibility that's all on that. And yet I do perceive you as somebody, unless you've just totally have got me completely snowed, that I think it's a goal. I see a lack of anxiousness in your life, and I see you doing some things that intentionally fight against anxiousness, I guess, in a way, or because of a mentality that you try to, that you want to espouse or work toward. Is that accurate? I think
it's probably one of those things that I don't think about because it's just how I am.
Yeah.
I often say if you don't laugh, you'll cry. Some things will get you so worked up that it's like, and you can tell that everyone else in the room is really upset about this, and they're moved. They're whatever. They're gonna, and I'm like, let's just laugh about this, and we'll figure it out, and we'll move on. Because what are you gonna do? You're either gonna get real angry and break something or throw, or you can laugh about it, and this will be a funny footnote when we tell this story later. We can just move on.
Yeah, and I guess that's just what I appreciate about you, Derick, because I think anymore, like I just value time with men who, I mean, there are a lot of angry guys out there that are, and when you kind of dive into why they're angry, it's they feel. Tell me what you think. This is just one of my assessments of they feel like they're losing, like they're kind of things are being taken from them, that they don't feel like they're winning at anything, and in light of that, it's like, well, what's you're just, your fists get tight and you get like your whole body gets tight, and there's an anger and anxiousness that comes out of that, and then you kind of vomit that on other people.
Yeah, nobody wants that, right?
Yeah.
I'd say there's definitely a segment of society that feels like they can do no right anymore. It's one of the reasons I think I've been off of Facebook for about a year and a half now. It was a week before my birthday, and I told my wife, I said, I'm going to delete this from my phone. There's no joy on Facebook anymore. I can't be there and be happy for so-and-so, because the next post is going to make me so agitated.
Yeah.
So I deleted it from my phone. And then I realized, oh, my birthday's tomorrow. 70 people are going to wish me happy birthday, and I'm not going to respond. I'm going to look like a jerk. So I had to go and literally like remove myself from Facebook rather than just getting rid of the app. And other than like losing a lot of photos that were there, I've not missed it at all.
Yeah.
Things can be used for good and bad. And a lot of people will look at things as good or bad, and they're neutral. It's how we use them. So guns, technology, whatever, definitely can be used either way. I just try to look at everything as positively as possible. Look for the good in everything. Look for the good in people, and try to speak joy.
Yeah, and to your credit, and ultimately to God's credit, it's I think it's good to hear. You can experience the things that you have experienced. You can come from the background that you have come from, not be defined by it, but also use it as something that I say is helping you find kind of a true north for you, where you're very clear about what you don't want to become, or what you don't want to be influenced by. And that's a positive thing. I think about my own family story. My mom, it was the same deal, she came from a divorced family, and she just said, I was so clear about what I did not want my family to look like. And that pushed her, and I've seen that pushes other people too in some positive directions.
Yeah, I just hope there's not a pendulum swing where like I say, well, here's the things I don't want, and then my kids are going to go, well, those are the things I don't want now,
Sure.
And it's going to swing back where I don't have a good relationship with my mother.
Yeah.
And so I'm afraid that like my kids will see like, well, Dad was a jerk to Grandma. Now when we're older, we're gonna treat him the way he treated her.
Yeah.
I hope they can see that like there's a reason Mom or Grandma and I don't get along.
Yeah.
And they can they can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of discuss it. Like there's a reason we don't hang out. We'll hang out with all the other grandparents and even ex-step grandparents. But it's a tense. That's, you talk about things that stress me out. I was actually asked to marry my brother and his fiance, a month ago, and being there and doing that wasn't stressful for me, but knowing that my mom would also be there and that we'd have to interact was the worst part of the day, really.
Yeah. My last big question to you, because we asked about your challenges of as a father. What being a husband right now? What's your biggest challenge in that arena of life?
I think we do really well. We make a really good team. We work together, so that's sometimes a challenge.
Yeah, that's just amazing. Like, I don't think my wife and I could work together, and I mean that with all due
In
respect.
all sincerity,
Yeah, I mean that with all due respect to my wife. But
The first year was really difficult because I would upset her, and then I'd go home, and that coworker that I had made mad
you
was
can't. Yeah,
was at your dining room table.
was now at home,
Yes.
still mad at me about the thing that I had done at work, and so it was a trip. But we've really worked through that, figured out where our strengths are, where we can, what we can focus on together, what we can focus on separately as far as work, and then even at home. I mean, 20 years in, I mean, she's still my best friend. She's still the person that I want to hold before I go to sleep. And I want to talk to about my day. It's so I actually shouldn't say this, but I spend a lot of time in her office. Like, I'll just step upstairs, want to run an errand or whatever at work, and just stop and talk and be like, "What are you working on?" She's like, "Oh, I'm paying these bills for these clothes you're buying." Okay. All right, see you later, and I'll go back to work.
Yeah.
But it's nice seeing her during the day. When she's not there, I kind of miss her. So
Yeah, that's really nice.
Well, we thank you for telling us your story. It's really interesting, and I know that our listeners are appreciative of you telling your story. But before we let you go, though, we have to do one thing. And the cool thing is today we have Aaron here in studio with us, who normally does our introduction. So I'm going to have him do it live. So Aaron, why don't you get in front of your dad's
right, here we go.
microphone there and give it to me?
Now it's time for the Dudes and Dads pop quiz.
All right.
Oh, yes.
Nailed it.
Yes, he did. That's almost like perfect. Like the recording, it sounded the
does.
same.
It's good.
Yeah, it was good. All right. So if you've never joined us, the Dudes and Dads pop quiz is a time that we just like to grill our guests.
Grill.
And we have random cards here that we pick, and we don't know what they are. You don't know what they are. So I will let Joel ask the first one.
Okay, what's one bad habit you're trying to get rid of? It's already gotten rid of Facebook, so there's that.
yeah, all my habits are great. I don't know what you're talking about. That I'm trying to get rid of. I don't know. I do nag my kids about certain things. And Carrie, the younger one, is very antisocial, and I'll push that as much as I can. Like, try to talk to her even though I know she doesn't want to talk. That's probably a bad habit. I do a lot of procrastination, and so I need to stop that. I've not been helping with breakfast in the morning or packing the school lunch, but I've been setting my alarm a little earlier and getting up and helping with that. So
great.
Awesome.
when we had 2 kids in school last year, it was like, oh yeah, 2 of us to make lunch. That makes sense. Now there's just 1 kid. I'm like, I'm just gonna stay in bed for another 15 minutes. But I've been getting up and helping with lunch.
All right. What is something that you like most? I can't read tonight, apparently. What is something you like that most people do not?
I don't mind the smell of skunks. I think that it's actually a sweet smell, and it doesn't. It's not like I breathe it in real deep, but it doesn't bother me.
What's left on your bucket list?
I'm a huge baseball fan. I've visited, I think, 19 ballparks, and so I definitely have more major league ballparks out west that I would definitely like to see. So those are on my bucket list. I'm a generally content person, so I don't know what else I need to do just yet, but it's typically when I see something and then I'm like, oh, the desire becomes very strong, where like, oh, now I've got to go there and do that thing.
Gotcha. Okay.
If you were to die tomorrow, what little thing would you regret not doing?
What little thing would I regret not doing? I don't know. Probably just telling my kids that I love them more. I don't know. No regrets.
No regrets.
regrets.
Really? Not even one? Andy, I need another
need another
one.
I did too. Like I was
Yeah.
looking through here and I like switched to 3 ones about death, and I'm like, I don't want to ask another one about death.
Gosh, it gets real dark sometimes. So let's imagine you have $100,000, Derek. $100,000. You have
Mhm.
to donate or create a charity. What do you do?
I've always had a heart for adoption. Obviously, I was adopted. We had made an agreement as a couple when we first started dating that if we had two children of the same sex, that we would adopt the other. That was be God's plan for us. And so we tried to adopt maybe 12 years ago, and that didn't work. But I would definitely want to use that money to help bring these families together in a better way.
All right, so last question of the Dudes and Dads pop quiz. Which talent would you most like to have?
My kids will tell you that I'm a terrible singer. People in church will actually say, like, oh, I could tell your dad was behind us because I could hear him singing terribly. So I would love to be able to carry a tune and sing and actually sound good. So that would be something that I would really enjoy.
Wonderful. I've only been with Derek during close enough during the singing of a national anthem or Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
Yeah, 7th inning stretch. That was great.
But here's the deal. I also am not great. So I think I don't know if there's I don't know what was happening at the sound wave level. I think we just kind of cancel each other out in our
Either that or it was doubly bad.
Doubly bad. No one else was sitting near us at the time. So.
A skunk can't smell its own smell, so maybe you guys can't hear that you're bad.
Interesting connection. Well, Derek, friend, thank you. I appreciate you coming all the way. Derek basically just drove to the other side of the county for this episode, and
then waited on you
and
for
then
like
waited
an hour
on me
and a half.
because I forgot my microphone at the other.
I
The
wasn't
other
gonna-
studio?
I wasn't going to bring any of that up.
Yeah, but I have, and Andy does because he's trying to hold me accountable to be.
Because I get the chance to kid you all the time.
Yeah, that's true. It's so good. So, well, hey, friends, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Dudes and Dads podcast. As always, you can check us over at dudesanddadspodcast.com.
That is true. And if you have any feedback for us, you can take out your phone, record a voice memo, and send it to feedback@dudesanddadspodcast.com. Or if you do not have a phone that has a voice memo on it, because you might not,
You might not.
you can call 574-213-8702. It's just a voicemail number.
Just leave a voicemail. You're not going to wake us up in the middle of the night, but we always love to hear your voice. And guys, we do appreciate the support. Be sure to check out our sponsors. As always, love for you to send some business their way. And if you're a big and tall dude, get over and see Derek as well. Please do. So until next time, all our friends, we wish you grace
and peace.